TitleMatchNetwork.com.
What are your thoughts on the whole Benoit tragedy? Because you got to work with Chris right before you left.
I got to work with Chris. I knew Chris. The WrestleMania before, his son sat on my lap. We watched his daddy wrestle. I'm glad to hear that they took all the heat off of steroids. Steroids not even mentioned now because it had nothing to do with what Chris did. That was proven by medical doctors. I was glad that the fact that his dad had the autopsy done and his brain was as messed up as it was. They said his brain looked like chocolate pudding, but gray, all messed up, almost like a liquid. It was so, his bled so much with scar tissue and everything that it was all messed up. He had the brain of an 80-year-old man, they said. Somebody that gives an autopsy in an old folks home or something, you know? And that part I was glad to hear because in a tragic situation like that, there's no excuse for anybody killing their wife and especially their kid, as well as himself. You try to find the best of a horrible situation. At least I did. And the only upside to it is they found out that he wasn't Chris when it happened. Something snapped, you know? Right. And you got a lot of bandwagon guys now, like Dynamite Kid and everything else, saying, I knew he was going to be nuts. I'm like, come on. How'd you know that when he was 16 years old? You didn't know that. Dynamite was one of the biggest assholes in this business for a while.
Right.
You know?
You spoke out early on when Chris passed. Did you get any heat for it? Or?
Oh, of course I did. Oh, I mentioned that my brother worked for WWE. Are you kidding me? Everybody accused me of throwing my brother under the bus. I didn't throw my brother under the bus. It was common knowledge that everybody knew we were in the same company.
Right.
You know, besides that, I wasn't working for him. If it didn't mean anything, why do you care? It was my big bitch. I don't work for you guys anymore. So what? I mean, from my dad to my brother and everybody about it. I told them all to back off and to kiss my rear end because I didn't say anything bad about anybody. I didn't condone things. I didn't say, hey, let's leave steroids legal. I didn't say anything wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just pretty much said, hey, you know, I heard it from inside tracks because they asked me. You know, I hate these guys all of a sudden that go in there and they say, oh, we know for a fact, we know for a fact. It was pretty much I was shutting up the reporter saying, hey, listen, dick. Mm. You know, my brother's one of the top dogs there, and there were phone calls or text messages sent to him from Chris. And there was. You know? Right. What am I going to lie? The guy put me on the spot. Wasn't throwing anybody under the bus. Some of the stuff is confidential. It ain't confidential anymore. There's no reason to talk about it. You know, I don't know what was said. I never claimed to know what was said. All that I know is that a friend of mine made a horrible mistake, killed somebody I respected, his wife, because I worked against Nancy a lot of times, and he killed a little boy in the process. And it's just a tragedy I hope I never hear about again in our business.
I guess you said in an interview that Chris told you he wanted more time off. Can you expand on that?
Well, he just said to me a lot of times, I feel like I'm losing my mind.
All right.
The business will eat you up if you let it. And when you ask for time off a lot of times, and which they did give Chris a lot of time off. Chris, I found out before, Chris made he made $1 million a year before and only worked 100-something days, man. That's a pretty good year.
Yeah.
And, you know, WWE got made out to be a big bad guy in the whole thing to the Joe public. But in essence, they're really not because they did take care of them. They give them a lot of time off. You have problems with these psychologists. They give you a psychiatrist, psychologist for your kids or whatever you need. They pay for it all. They pay for your medical, MRIs, or whatever. They pay for everything. So it's not like they leave you hanging.
Right.
You know, and that's where I think WWE got stomped on the wrong way. They didn't do that. They helped Chris out as much as they could. But he still was overwhelmed and tired. Lack of top guys. Or the same thereof, always on top. That's why you cannot put all your eggs in one basket and have one Batista. It's worked out better for him now that he's got a Cena and a Batista and a Randy Orton and a Rey Mysterio. You have 4 baby faces. Now you can spread the wealth around a little bit. Now you can spread the belt around a little bit, and it'll mean the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
That has helped out the single deal. If they would just learn and take that to the tag team level and have like 8 tag teams that are all good.
What are some of your fondest memories of Chris and Nancy?
Well, Chris was a private guy. Chris is a real private guy. Nancy, of course, as woman, all those years down in Florida when she was with Kevin Sullivan, she played that gimmick to the T. She actually believed in that gimmick. I think her and Kevin lived that gimmick for a while, you know.
Right. Huh.
And both were just good friends, man. I just hated to see the tragedy happen. Any of the guys that died, Benoit, my travel partner, Bulldog, you know.
Right.
Just a lot of guys are just gone now, man, today that I just wish they were still here.
What do you think of the wellness policy? And do you find it ironic since in the old days, guys used to drink and party and wrestle every night with no problems?
Yeah, there's a rebellion factor. You get on guys enough, they're going to rebel, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if it's good, bad. I guess you could be on a policy. All it is, I'm sure at the end of the day, it's good for the guys, okay? But you're an independent contractor. I don't see how they can tell people that you have to do the wellness policy if you're an independent contractor.
You think Congress should really get involved? Or you
No.
think that's, yeah.
Congress should keep their nose out of the wrestling business. They have no beings. Until the congressmen want to get in there and take a bump in the ring and know what our business is like, they need to just shut up and leave it alone.
What do you think that makes Vince so invincible? Money?
No. Vince is a very smart guy. Vince is a smart, shrewd businessman. I believe he would cut the legs out from under his mom to make a buck. But that's just, you got to be like that in this business. That's what this business is about. You got to be able to make that kind of decision. I would have no problem in the wrestling business, being in the wrestling business, knowing what it takes for this company to grow. If I was in a power position to have to hire and fire guys, I'd feel sorry, but not for very long.
Right.
This is a business.
You ever talk to your brother about that? Like what it's like to be in this spot?
I told him, I said, take the heat off yourself. Put me in that spot to take the heat off of you. You still be the vice president, but let me be the day-to-day hands-on in the locker room dealing with the guys. If I don't do this thing, send me be the guy there to go say, hey, man, you got one chance to fucking straighten up.
Right.
Oops, excuse me. One chance to straighten up or you're gone. I have no problem doing that for the business if that's my job. I told him that.
Some guys think that your brother's overpaid. What do you think?
Well, listen, in that position, you're a psychiatrist, you're a psychologist, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your boss, your friend, your not friend, you're everything to these guys.
Right.
He's got to answer his phone 24/7 to the guys. He's got to bail guys out of jail. He's got to take guys, put them in treatment. He's got to get guys out of treatment, get guys out of jail. He's got to. The other day, I knew a couple guys that got stranded for flights at the WrestleMania. Coming home from spring break from Orlando, you kidding me? You can't get a flight. But he had arranged for people to miss their flights to get on planes, go through this city, that city, that city, that city, and be in a certain city by 4 o'clock. He's got to play travel agent.
Right.
That's his job. And he takes that on. He does do a lot for what he gets paid. I couldn't even tell you what he gets paid because I never asked him what he gets paid. I know it's got to be a lot of money. You're a VP of a publicly traded company.
Right.